How does a civilization build monuments that outlast the ancient world, endure millennia of systemic collapse, and exist as a modern nation today? This environment was defined by a stark geographic divide. The green strip is Kemet, the black land, created by the Nile River. Surrounding it is a vast, deadly desert, the red land. To the early civilization, this desert functioned as an impassable fortress wall. Within that protective boundary, the Nile flooded with predictable reliability every single year. Those seasonal floods dumped rich, dark soil along the banks, generating agricultural wealth. That surplus food allowed early hunting and farming tribes to settle permanently and centralize power into a single kingdom. To govern this new society, the Egyptians developed the concept of ma'at, universal balance and harmony. They believed the natural order of the floods and the seasons required a divine steward. Their earliest pharaohs operated as living gods, carrying the responsibility for maintaining the universe's equilibrium. This obsession with divine order and eternal life manifested physically in the Old Kingdom. The pharaohs mobilized skilled labor to stack millions of stone blocks into gigantic, perfectly aligned tombs. The Great Pyramids of Giza rose from the desert as permanent physical anchors for their god-kings. Because the afterlife was viewed as a physical continuation of existence, the spirit required an intact physical vessel. By carefully removing internal organs and treating the body with salts and resins, priests ensured the pharaoh could successfully navigate eternity. Mummification was an engineering solution to a spiritual problem. The Nile fed the society and the desert shielded it. For centuries, this geographic isolation allowed Egypt to build a highly ordered, virtually untouchable civilization. But that stability relied entirely on the weather. Around 2200 BCE, the seasonal floods failed. A shift in the climate reduced the Nile's flow, leading to widespread crop failures and devastating famine. Without the food surplus to maintain order, central authority collapsed, and the Old Kingdom fractured into civil war. This internal chaos stripped away Egypt's invincibility. For the first time, the natural desert walls failed to protect them. A mysterious group from Western Asia, known as the Hyksos, crossed into the northern territories and conquered the fractured Egyptian state. The Hyksos fired arrows with lethal speed using the composite bow and deployed the horse-drawn chariot, introducing mobile warfare the Egyptians had never encountered. These new military technologies allowed the invaders to overwhelm local defenses. This occupation ended Egypt's foundational era of peace. The culture faced a choice. They either had to abandon their ancient isolation and adapt to a violent, wider world, or they would be consumed by it. The Egyptian rulers in the south chose to adapt. They mass-produced the exact weapons the Hyksos had used against them, launched a counteroffensive, and drove the invaders out. This military victory launched the era known as the New Kingdom. Pharaohs mobilized armies, pushing into the Middle East and south into Nubia to become an expanding empire. As borders grew, an unprecedented volume of gold and resources flowed down the Nile, funding colossal temple complexes like Karnak and Abu Simbel to project absolute dominance. While mighty conquerors built that empire, our modern connection to this era is largely tied to a relatively minor ruler, King Tutankhamun. Because his tomb was unearthed intact by Howard Carter in 1922, the volume of his surviving golden artifacts reignited global interest in Egyptian history. Egypt overcame this collapse by shifting its core identity. They abandoned the safety of isolation to build the ancient world's dominant superpower. But extreme expansion brought extreme pressure. Over the next millennium, internal conflicts eroded the empire's strength, opening the door to foreign invasions. Libyan and Nubian forces were followed by Assyrians, Persians, and eventually the Macedonian Greek armies of Alexander the Great. Instead of wiping out Egyptian culture, these new rulers absorbed it. During the Ptolemaic dynasty, Greek kings and queens, culminating with Cleopatra, adopted Pharaonic traditions, worshipped the old gods, and built classic temples until the Roman Empire finally annexed the territory. The region underwent another pivot in the 7th century when Arab Muslim armies pushed into the territory. They introduced the Arabic language and Islamic culture, gradually replacing ancient traditions and elevating Cairo into an epicenter for mathematics, science, and medieval trade. Centuries later, a chaotic invasion by Napoleon's French forces yielded an accidental archaeological breakthrough. They uncovered the Rosetta Stone. Because it displayed the same decree carved in 3 different scripts, including Greek and ancient hieroglyphics, scholars could finally decipher the dead language of the pharaohs. Through thousands of years of continuous invasion, Egypt was never erased. Instead, it operated as a cultural sponge, absorbing the religions, languages, and scientific knowledge of every conqueror that passed through, ensuring its survival as a crossroads between continents. Entering the 19th century, an ambitious ruler named Muhammad Ali launched a modernization campaign. He overhauled the economy, building industrial factories, opening modern schools, and integrating Egyptian infrastructure with European markets. This map shows the achievement of that era, the Suez Canal. Completed in 1869, it linked the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. It cut thousands of miles off the journey between Europe and Asia, turning Egyptian territory into a strategically valuable maritime choke point. Engineering that shortcut required massive loans. The debt from the canal's construction gave European powers leverage. By 1882, the British military occupied the country to secure their shipping interests, triggering decades of organized nationalist resistance. That resistance climaxed in 1952. A coordinated revolution led by Egyptian military officers overthrew the British-backed monarchy, dismantling colonial oversight and declaring Egypt an independent republic. From that military corps emerged Gamal Abdel Nasser, who cemented his status as a pan-Arab icon with one action. In 1956, he nationalized the Suez Canal, stripping control from foreign investors. For centuries, foreign empires used Egypt's geography as a tool to subjugate it. By seizing the canal, modern Egypt reclaimed its sovereignty by taking control of that same geographic asset. Independence did not guarantee stability. Through the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the nation navigated wars, economic shifts, and political friction, culminating in the street protests of the 2011 Arab Spring. The resignation of longtime President Hosni Mubarak captured the globe's attention. Looking at the full timeline, this event represents the newest iteration of a historical cycle, a pattern of systemic upheaval and political rebirth. Over 5,000 years, the nation has constantly reinvented itself. They began as an isolated kingdom, expanded into a military empire, absorbed the cultures of foreign conquests, and ultimately emerged as an independent modern power. Egypt outlasted the empires that tried to conquer it by absorbing their languages, religions, and administrative systems into a composite identity that continues to survive today.